Hi, I'm Amy Siskin, President and co-founder of the New Agenda, and thank you so much for all coming today to join us for our second annual National Girlfriends Networking Day. Yay! So the reason we chose June 4th is this is the day that women got the right to vote, and we also wanted to make sure college women were home so they could come to these events, and I'm happy to say that 70% of this crowd is 35 or younger, and 40% of the crowd are college women. So thank you so much for coming. Welcome. And the reason why we started National Girlfriends Networking Day is that while women are graduating at the same rate as men, once we get into the workforce, we're a different career trajectory than men. And the difference is men have connections as a birthright as they enter the workforce, and women do not. And we're going to change that together. Once a year, we're going to celebrate the power of women's connections and working together. And that's what this day is about. And we hope that you're going to learn to do this all year round, and we can be part of teaching you to do this. When we started the New Agenda in 2008, there was one simple premise, and I want everyone to take this in, that if women supported other women, everything else would take care of itself. I want everybody to take that in and believe that. So we're going to start today. And there's two things that I know. As I put together this event, and we put this together, this is a result of connections from our first corporate sponsor, who was in a summer house with me after we graduated from college and has been a connection since, to our friends Heidi at Xerox and Kath at Cisco, who helped us get these events, and to all of our wonderful people who have been involved in so many ways. This is all a result of connections, and so I've learned that. You're never too old to learn the value of your connections and your personal connections. The other thing I know is I want you all to be fearless. I want you to walk out of here feeling, if nothing else, fearless. And I want to tell you all a secret. I have failed. I have failed many times in my life, and guess what? I'm going to fail some more times. And I want you all to know that we as an organization, as we as a sisterhood, have your back, that you have always your girlfriends to turn back to, and that's why we have National Girlfriends Networking Day. So two other requests, if everyone in the room could turn down their ringer, just so it doesn't disrupt the live stream feed. And also everybody in our remote events, welcome from all over the country. We'd like to hear from you and have you be part of what we're doing. And we're going to spend the second half of the program taking your questions. So use hashtag NGNDay. And then we're going to, at the second half of the program, take your questions and comments and incorporate them into our panelists. So without further ado, I would like to turn it over to the wonderful Soledad O'Brien, who's an Emmy Award-winning journalist.
Thank you.
And Soledad, we'd love to hear about your career path.
Sure. My career path has sort of been the philosophy of put your head down and just keep plowing ahead. And there have been times when I've thought, well, is this a great strategy? Is this a great philosophy for how you want to map out your career? I'm a journalist. I've been a journalist for 26 years. I went to Harvard undergraduate, and when I was a junior at Harvard, I realized I didn't want to be pre-med. I didn't know what to do. So I started working in the summer as an intern at a TV station, WBZ TV in Boston. And I liked it, and it was crazy. I was really good at it. I mean, you know, it was a lot of like fetch coffee and remove staples from the wall. So I'm excellent, clearly, and those sorts of things. But I also really enjoyed it. I liked the people. I liked the idea of working on a project, all of those things. I just loved it. And so I sort of moved up the ranks very quickly, and I dropped out of school and spent my what would have been my senior year working at this TV station. I always joke that my parents were so, woefully disappointed because they had spent like $100,000 on my education at Harvard, and they just were like, "But you remove staples, like that's a job, But I loved it. It was just this sort of teamwork. And then as I kind of grew, I realized like, oh, there are these things that I can influence in terms of what stories we cover, and also how we cover them, and that was sort of a cool thing. So I worked in local news, then I went to NBC News to work with Bob Bazell as his researcher and associate producer. Did that for a little bit, was sent out to San Francisco to start reporting, came back to to New York when that show I did in San Francisco was canceled, and worked as an anchor at MSNBC, which had started, and then went over to the Weekend Today show at NBC, and then eventually left there to go to CNN. So I basically was at NBC stations for 16 years, CNN for 10 years, and 2 days ago, this is my second day of not working for CNN, where I have started a production company, and I'll service CNN by giving them documentaries and other folks. So my career has been really just plow, ahead and do the things that you want to do. Where I have found a lot of enjoyment has been in the foundation that I run, which helps young women. We started a foundation, my husband and I, right after Hurricane Katrina, and the work that I was doing there. And it was incredible because you saw these really great young women who are completely without a net, completely with nothing. I mean, nothing. My best friend said to me, there's a girl who needs help. You and Brad, my husband, need to help pay her tuition at school. None of the public schools are really open yet. And I went back to my husband and said, Auntie Kim, she's my kid's godmother, says that we need to help pay for Alexia to go to high school. He's like, we have 4 children in private school in New York City. Like, why would we do that? I was like, I don't know, but she says this kid needs help. And Alexia ended up being the first girl of the now 25 girls that we have in our foundation that we support. 2, she just graduated from high school. She'll start in college. We now only take girls who are going through college. So we've now spent a big chunk of my time over the last several years now has been to create a foundation that sends young women to and through college. We grab women mentors, we help pay their tuition, we have sponsors and scholarships, et cetera, et cetera. And it's been incredibly rewarding because what I realized was while I was enjoying journalism, I didn't necessarily feel like I was doing my part in all the things that I was covering. Like in Katrina, you can't really fix the city, it's 80% underwater. But I could take that girl, and I could help this girl, and I could do that. And it seemed like, okay, I found a way to figure out in all these tragedies that I'm covering what I can do. I was asked earlier to talk a little bit about ways in which I think women have either been helpful in my career, and I would say every step of the way. I think that every so often I meet women who will tell me horror stories. They're like, oh, women don't support each other. It's so foreign to me. I just have not had that experience from when I worked at NBC News and Katie Couric was anchoring the Today Show, and sometimes I'd get to be the fill-in newsreader. And I would sit on the set while she was doing her segments just to watch her because she was incredibly talented, but also just very generous with her advice. And I remember once she called me to her office and said, come here, I want to give you some advice. And so I walked behind her to her office, and she said, listen, when I toss to you, stop thanking everybody. I'd say, thank you, Matt, thank you, Katie, thank you, Val. She said, stop doing that, it's too much. And also gave me some other advice. And when I left, a couple of people said to me, oh my God, I can't believe she did that. Meaning, the nerve of her to give you some advice. And I was just like, but my feeling was like, oh my God, Katie Couric has just spent 17 minutes with me giving me advice on how to get better. It gave me tremendous confidence, right? Because you couldn't completely suck if Katie Couric was going to spend time helping you get better. And also her advice was, as always, right on the money. And we developed a real friendship and a mentoring relationship. And I always felt very grateful, and I realized like some of those other people, I think, went in it with the wrong mindset. That they looked at, someone giving feedback as, the word that rhymes with witchy, can you believe that? As if somehow that was a bad thing, as opposed to like the most amazing thing. And so I've tried to be that person who takes someone aside and says, this is good, this is bad, work on this, I think you're doing this wrong, whatever. And maybe sometimes it's misinterpreted. I've never had the really, writ large, a bad experience with women bosses. Everybody has individuals that are challenging, but where I think I've been most lucky is in this transition that I'm making from being on-air talent only and working for a company to running a production company. So I'm now a CEO, and 2 days ago I was not a CEO. And so it's been very interesting because I run these things by my girlfriends who've been incredibly supportive in sort of saying, from the outside, this is your brand. From the outside, this is what we think you can do. From the outside, there are no stupid questions. What do you need help with? And I have been just amazed from moms at my kids' school who are like, well, I've done this. Do you need a great accountant? I've done this. Do you need someone to shoot this? Do you need this? You need back office work for now? It's been incredible. I have felt very lucky. I think the reason why is that you sort of reap what you sow. And people will network with you if they look and say, you do good work. that if everything that you're associated with, whether it's when I was Staple Girl or doing big docs with big budgets, it was always sort of high quality. I think people are always very happy to say, yeah, I'll network with you because you're the kind of person who's reliable to turn out good work. You'll be there on time, you'll do a good job, I can rely on you. And so to me, networking is all about sort of quality meeting quality. And if you can continue to keep that level high, everyone's going to want to work with you. If you start, getting sloppy, then you lose everyone, because of course networking is really about people reflecting upon, themselves, your work.
Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you. So I'm Leslie Jane Seymour. I run a magazine called More, and I'm the second failed biologist. I had no idea. So you're going to find out, Amy, did you fail biology also? I started out as a writer in a family of doctors and nurses who told me I would fail miserably if I became a writer. There was no way I could support myself. I'd be out on the street. So I went to Duke in North Carolina. I knew I didn't want to be a doctor. I was too squeamish, so I ended up going the marine biology route. Got there, did 2 years of science, which was great, but in these giant lecture courses with 1,000 people. I was like a mediocre tester. I wasn't great. I wasn't going to medical school. There were people who were staying up all night to be brain surgeons. I was like, okay, I'm going to write anyway. So I just bailed out, became an English major, as my parents, practically committed hara-kiri and said, what are you going to do with that? And actually wrote a letter to 17 magazine. I was a big magazine consumer in those days. 17 was my Bible. And in those days, you could write to somebody and say, gee, I love your product, I want to work for you. And they actually had internships, and they actually brought you in, and they actually paid you to be there. And that's how I got started, cleaning the closets at 17, and booking the shoots and all that stuff, and being the general gopher. And then I knew I finally had to stay in the fashion and beauty area of journalism when it was time to go back to school, and my boss, who I'm still friendly with today, turned to me and said, okay, go into the closet and pack up whatever you want. I'm like, excuse me? She's like, yeah, take whatever you want. These were the days when there were samples. Samples cost nothing. They would make 10 of them, and they would get rid of them. And so I went back to college with a full 17 wardrobe. If you are not an actor in Hollywood, why would you not go into this business? I mean, it's like, I'm not an actor, but it's really, really close to Hollywood. So from there, I left, and I landed a job at Women's Wear Daily, and they literally threw me out in the streets of New York. I had not lived in New York. My dad was in the military, so we moved all around, and I really didn't know New York that well. And they just sent me to start covering 7th Avenue. And I had a very gritty first beginning, because I didn't know what they were saying. And I came back the first day. I was covering juniors. I was covering all this junk. And my very gritty boss says, so what are they telling you about? What's new? And I said, they're talking about this thing called a show collar. Everything has a show collar. She goes, there's no such thing as a show collar. I'm like, well, I don't know. Everybody's talking. It's in my notes here. So she says, show it to me. She opens the Fairchild Dictionary. And it's this little flange here. She goes, that's a shawl collar. I said, okay, well, it's the show S-A-W-L-C-O-L-A. That's what I got. So that's how I began my fashion and beauty journalism. Went from there, then went to the New York Daily News for 1 year as a journalist, and then went over to magazines, because in that day, all the newspapers were shrinking back then, even then. I didn't want to go into magazines. They seemed too slow. But I needed to pay my rent, and I was on unemployment for like 4 months after the Daily News shut its evening paper, which was a big to-do. And a friend called me, who'd been at Women's Wear, and said, come write copy for Harper's Bazaar. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to kill myself. It's too slow. Went to Harper's, loved it, had a great time. Someone gave my name to Vogue, went over to Vogue. Never, I mean, in a million years thinking I would stay there more than a year, because I was a kid. And ended up staying there for 9 years through the transition from Grace Mirabella to Anna Wintour. And then I had my first child. And I was being driven mad, basically. And I was very much like you, but I didn't catch on. I was very much the good girl. I had my head down, doing my work. I was the voice of Anna. I was the voice of Andre. I was, all these I was invisible. But I was the writer that did everything. And I remember one night, this is before computers, I used to go into Vogue at 5 in the morning, turn lights on, do my work before anybody came home. And then you'd have to stay there late at night. And I remember Andre calling me. I waited till 11:30 at night for something. He said, "Darling, I'm off to the opera with Carl, and I can't get to you, so we'll have to talk later." And I remember holding the phone thinking, okay, 10 years of this. What's wrong with this picture? I'm here in the hot, dark office, and he's off with Karl Lagerfeld. So I don't want to do this anymore. And I had a baby, and I said, you know what, let me freelance, and that's what I did. I did that for 2.5 years until my son was in nursery school. And then somebody called me and asked me, do I want to be a beauty editor at Glamour? I'm like, why not? Went back to magazines thinking I would be there for another year. After that, did 3 years there, and then many, many publishers said, maybe you should run a magazine. I was a writer. I said, why would I run a magazine? But I took their advice, and I landed a job at YM, which was a teen book, and then I went over to Redbook to run and reposition that. Then I went to Marie Claire, ran that. That was a whole nother wild ride, dealing with the French, because I had an American boss and then a French partner, and they were like a divorced couple. And it was, you know, please pass the salt to the French. No, thank you. I don't want to pass the salt to the French. And I was the little monkey in between. And the only thing I can tell you, if you want to talk about failure, was this was my dream job to run Marie Claire, because I was a big Francophile. The way it started with the first request from the French boss in France was, could I find her a pooper scooper? And I'm not kidding you. An automatic pooper scooper, because her neighbor's dog was pooping on her yard and she had to do something about it, and she couldn't find one in France. Okay, so I should have known. This is where my whole job was headed. Anyway, at the very end, let's just say that, you know, I had 15 bestsellers. To this day are still the bestsellers of that magazine ever. But my boss wanted one thing, the French wanted another. They were clashing like this, and I was the monkey in the middle who got killed. But what was great is I took 1.5 years off and hung with my daughter, who, you know, I'd been traveling the world with them, and it was very tough on my daughter, my second child. And so that was the wonderful part. And after 1.5 years of being super mom out in the suburbs, my daughter finally said to me, I was like, okay, so like, you know, your friends are coming over, we're doing this thing. And she's like, Mother, you need a job. No, I don't want you here anymore. You're getting into my hair. So then I went and I looked for a job, and I landed More, which is really about me and my life. I didn't have to be me but Midwest. I didn't have to be me but French. I didn't have to be me but something else. I could be me, which was really lovely. And what you learn, you know, the great thing is you, and I know some of you are just starting out, is failure is part of the whole experience. And today, you see it more and more. You know, companies are not reliable like they were in the past. When my, you know, well, there were several times I saw people being fired in the magazine business. But in those days, when Grace Mirabella was let go at Vogue, when I was there, and we were little mice at the door when the whole thing happened, we were, you know, those little peons. People had been in those jobs for 30 years, 40 years, 17 years. My boss had been there. People had, you know, that was their entire lives, and it has changed. And so you are going to fail. You are going to fall. You're going to be fired. But the most important thing is, how do you get up? How do you get up? How do you go on? How do you restart yourself? How do you build brand you? And I was just listening to Soledad saying to her here, it is all about brand you. And you know, you can still be part of a corporation today, but you still have to be brand you. So,
thank you.
Thank you.
Loretta.
So I'm so struck by the fact that both of the comments.
You studied biology.
I was going to say biology. I was wise enough to avoid it in the first place. But what I'm struck by is the fact that even though my own career has taken a very different direction, which I'll describe, it actually has a very similar point, which is that every stage we go through, we are building careers based on our reputation.
Oh, yeah.
Because our networks are only useful, really, if we are somebody that people want to network with. And so my own, the one thing I always knew I was interested in was business and commerce in one way or another. So after I finished an MBA, I started in the retail business, in the department store business, which I stayed in for a few years, and it was really not the perfect choice for me, but I learned a huge amount. And the one thing I will say about that is that whether I was cleaning stock rooms or working on the sales floor, I determined that as long as I was there, I was going to be the best person, whoever did that thing.
That's right.
And it's because whoever you encountered, you were building your reputation in that situation. So eventually, I came to New York and went to American Express, where I had a great career in marketing, and then I became Chief Marketing Officer of Oppenheimer Funds in the money management business. The thing about this career that, as I was forced to reflect on it for these comments, is that it's really helpful to know when to pivot and what you have to offer to the next situation, because I am keenly aware that whenever I made a move in my career, I was somehow calculating, what do I know that will be useful to these new people and that will also give me time to learn what I need to know to be really successful in this new situation. So my current situation is that I am one of the founding partners of an organization called Golden Seeds. We were founded in 2005. We were founded on the premise that women were starting more than 50% of the companies in America, but we were receiving less than 5% of the capital going into new companies, which we thought was completely unacceptable. There were a lot of reasons for it, which I don't have time to go into today, but we decided to start investing in companies that were founded and led by at least one woman. We believe very deeply in gender diversity, so we are not only about women because we need everyone at the table to make these decisions, but for many reasons women's businesses were not being funded, and we believe that it is women businesses that are going to fuel the economy. The other side effect that has been great for a networking event is that our members are basically the people who invest in these companies. We have nearly 300 members from all over the country now. They all invest every year. They're required to invest. 80% of them are women, and they are women because they have to have the resources to be able to do this investing. They are older than a lot of the women who are starting these businesses, not always, but in most cases. And it is quite thrilling to see how these women who are the investors will work tirelessly on behalf of these companies to deploy their own networks on behalf of these companies that we invest in. So I'm one of the people who runs Golden Seeds today. We were asked to comment on any struggles that we've had, and as I thought about this, I thought, and I was happy, Amy, to hear you talk about the rate at which women are completing college and the struggles we have for how progress we're making. And it is alarming that women are sort of stuck at 15, 18, 17% in many walks of life, corporate boards, corporate leadership, Congress. I mean, what is it? We're sort of stuck at less than 20% for sure, despite all of our education and credentials. And as I think about it, I will say for myself that it took me a long time to get comfortable with power. Because we will all have our heads down, working very hard, but really we've got to also be comfortable with how we can take the responsibility, authority, our knowledge, and our credentials and really make it a powerful statement and deploy power in the most effective way. I feel so strongly about this that I recently joined the board of an organization called TakeTheLeadWomen.com that is really helping women all over the country accelerate the pace at which we assume roles of power, because at the rate at which we are going, it is going to be 70 years before we reach parity in most of these fields. So we are, just similar to this organization at Take the Lead Women, we are very busy trying to train women to capitalize and get comfortable with how to use their own power. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Wow.
Thank you, biology.
No, I took a completely different spin. I remember kind of growing up always taller than everyone, being extremely shy, not really knowing what I wanted to do. All I was trying to figure out was, God, why did you make me so different and so tall outside of everyone else? And then basketball came into my life, and the high school coach really took a special liking to me, and really taught me and showed me the ropes. So to fast forward, by the time I started playing as a freshman in high school, and women's basketball at that time wasn't big at all. We were still AIAW. Title IX had kicked in 72. That was 76. And I really didn't know that women could be athletes outside of golf and tennis, you know, what we saw, inner city kid. And so by the time I finished high school, I was one of the top high school players in the nation. And so all of the schools, all of the top universities were reaching out, sending letters, were interested in offering me an athletic scholarship. So again, we were AIAW, so not being in NCAA, that meant that schools were not flying you out like they do now. They fly you to their schools for an official visit and things like that. So I know that my family wanted me to go to the University of Louisville because I'm from Louisville, Kentucky, which was a big, huge school. And we also have the University of Kentucky, which is a huge basketball school as well. So they were not trying to let me out of the state. But here I am. I'm wanting to see the world. I'm looking at letters coming in like, University of Hawaii. That sounds interesting.
That sounds like fun.
Yeah, that sounds like fun. I'm looking at the schools in California because I'm thinking I'm getting out of here. It has to be more to life than that. So, you know, I had to make a decision, and, you know, I just out of the clear blue sky, looking at brochures, talking to the coaches, talking to players, you know, and that whole recruitment process, coaches calling from 7:30 in the morning to 11 at night. Wow. You know, I mean, it was horrific. And my parents were like, you need to make a decision, you know, because everyone's life was made easy. So I woke up one morning, and it was Arizona State. I can't tell you why. Well, maybe, I think it was, at that time, it was 47,000 students. She grew up she lived in Scottsdale. So. And the campus was beautiful. The facilities were great. And the coach, Julian Simpson, at the time, she played on the '76 Olympic team. So, you know, I don't know. I just woke up, and so I called her up, and not realizing the time difference, Eastern time. So, you know, her husband answers the phone, hello. I was like, hi, is Coach Simpson available? He's like, wait a minute. So she gets on the phone, and, you know, and so I'm like, she says, hello? I said, rise and shine. I'm ready to sign. and so she was like, oh, you know, I felt she changed. She's like, oh, that's awesome. That's great news. So there I go, packing off, you know, to Arizona. Now, at this time, I really didn't know what I wanted to do, what I wanted to be. Secretly in the back of my mind, I always wanted to be a singer or, you know, or something like that. But my life just kind of evolved. So once I got to college, you know, I had a great college career there. I'm still the all-time leading scorer and rebounder, male or female. Fantastic. You know, oh my gosh. Yeah, they have the house as the all-time leading scorer, but his numbers are lower than mine. So, yeah. So we're trying to hide the fact that a girl, you know, has that title. No, I'm just kidding. But I had a great college career there. And so, again, when I reached the end of that road, that path, there was no professional basketball in America for women. So if I wanted to continue to play, I had to make a choice to go to Europe and play. And so I did. I was like, hey, I want to see the world, yay, you know. So I went to Spain and played 6 years, and I went to Italy and played 4.5 years. I went to France and played a year, and I played 1 season in Japan. And it was an amazing, amazing, amazing time. Then, in 1997, it was my 12th year of playing over there, they started the WNBA. And here I am, 34, I'm a veteran, getting ready to turn 35. They sent a scout over, and I get drafted in the elite draft, and so I'm the number 4 pick to come and play for the New York Liberty. So to be a part of a league that had just started was amazing. I mean, Lisa Leslie and myself, because New York and LA played the first WNBA game, Lisa Leslie and I did the first jump ball, and it was amazing. I mean, I scored the first 2 points for the Liberty, you know, in the history of the game. And I have an 8-year-old daughter who's playing basketball now. And so, I mean, to be a role model and to be a pioneer, it is just amazing. And it brings tears to my eyes sometimes because sometimes us as girls, we forget how powerful we are. And I'm just in a transition, and I have a lot going on right now with my dad being really ill. And, you know, and I think I've been so blessed. And us girls, this is such an amazing time to be a girl. We have so much to be thankful for, and we are so powerful. And when you said, I'm sorry guys, and when you said, like, girls we don't cheer for each other, sometimes we're catty towards one another, we have to change that, because I think sometimes you have to ask yourself, why am I catty? Why do I feel negative towards that? And usually you feel negative towards something when you're not confident in who you are and where you are in your life. And I would just say, always strive to work hard, to put your head down, roll your sleeves up, and work hard to be the best that you can be. Not comparing yourself to anyone else, but being the best that you can be. And then you can step out there confidently and be comfortable in who you are, because it is about team me. It is about team us, because when we are powerful in team us, or team me, team I, then you can go out and support and help other people, because if this world is going to truly be a better place, it is going to be up to us, girls, to really make this place a better place. I'm sorry, my father just got a terrible diagnosis. And it just all of a sudden just kind of hit me right now. But I just feel so blessed. And so now, after the sports and everything, I'm transitioning. I want to sing. And so
Sing something. Sing something.
I would definitely sing for you, but I have to get this emotion. I got to get past this stage. Let me just clear up, and so after we pass it on and everything, and then come back. But I would definitely. But for me, networking, trying to find people in that new arena outside of the sports arena, for me, is something that I'm looking for, the right people. You know, me coming into it at 50, all of a sudden now you want to sing, you know, and so finding the right team and the right people to push that, because it's never too late. Us girls, I mean, you can go back and do whatever you want to do. It's never too late. So I want to be the poster child for that. I want to say, you know, I started this. Thank you so very much. Thank you. So that's kind of, you know, where I'm at. And so I kind of feel like I'm at a standstill with that, and just kind of understanding, because I feel like, you know, no one believes I can, well, they think I can do it, but just finding the right people.
So networking-wise,
yes.
A conversation that I had with someone the other day was to pitch kind of a series about reimagining your life. And I was like, oh, that's so interesting. I'd love to do pieces on people who've reimagined, sort of, you know, a lot of the stories that I do are about people stories, really storytelling through individuals. I love doing docs, but I love it to be about a person, if you can really get in their head and really have them be inspiring. So I hear these stories, and I'm like, all right, just book my first two. I said to the guy, I think this is really doable, reimagining your life. I mean, it's exactly what you're talking about. And so when you talk about networking, it's not like, oh, you know, I'm doing you some favor. It's like, okay, you're helping me figure out the stories. I literally, when I go in a few days to this meeting, I'm going to be like, do I have some stories for you? And here's how we tell the story. I hope you have video of all your time at the Liberty, because that will really help our story. But I mean, I think that that's the whole point of networking, right? To say, like, so how do I help me by leveraging off of something that was a great, you know, that's a win-win at the end of the day. And I think part of that has to be, if you're going to network, you have to kind of throw out into space, like, here's what I want to do. When I was having my conversations at CNN, and they were kind of offering me things that weren't so interesting for me, and I just kept running around to people and saying, so can you make a job out of just doing the stuff you want to do? And people were like, yeah, I think you can. I think you can. And so, you know, I think by just sending that out there is always sort of the way to do it.
And the other interesting takeaway for all of us, and I started off on Wall Street and now I run a national non-for-profit, is we all had on and off ramps. We've all changed careers. I think a lot of time there's a fear that, oh my God, I'm going to do something new. I also had no idea what I wanted to do after I graduated from college. And a sorority sister of mine said, oh, you should go interview for this bank. You'd like it. It's like a continuation of college. I said, that sounds fun. That's how I ended up in Wall Street for 20 years. But sometimes you have to actually just take what is right in front of you and act upon it and just do a really good job at what you do. Quality and working well for each other, and make yourself available. I have to say, now that I go to a lot of these events and I'm involved with a lot of women's organizations and other women, that people you are going to meet in this room are going to change your life. I guarantee you that somebody you meet today, and it might not be immediate, it might be a year from now, it might be 2 years from now, is going to come back into your life, and you will understand why. And they will help you in some way. You have to put yourself out there and make yourself available, but things always do come back to you. And we talked about, why are women under 20% of leaders? Well, I think the answer is what we're doing here is the solution, that these networks, that these connections that we're all going to learn to build together, starting today, if we're not already doing it. And it can be in fun ways. It can be fun like this. It can be in your summer house. It can be your sorority, your basketball team, your whatever it is. Every single one of these are connections. One of the events actually is a girl I played field hockey with at Cornell. So all these connections all come back to you over time. So with that, I would love if anybody has questions or comments or experiences that they would like to throw out to the panel. We have a mic. We have a question. Go ahead, stand up, honey.
Say your name. Oh, hi, my name is Dominique Mann. I actually have a question for
Sure.
Well, thanks again, for speaking to us. I have to say that, thank you. I have to say that my interest in journalism kind of launched when, my family and I several years ago were sort of crowded around the TV and watching Black in America. And I said to myself, because I'd always had this budding interest in journalism, and I saw the documentary with my family, and I said, hey, if Soledad could do it, I, be successful in journalism, I could too.
Okay.
So I just want to say thank you again.
Oh, man, I love that.
And I have to ask, one of the things you said, I think it was at a prior event, was that, despite the hardships you may face or criticism you may face as a journalist, no one could deny that you got the facts, that you got the good reporting, and that you did in-depth work. So I have to ask, now that I work at a TV network and I sort of see how a lot of the inside work kind of goes, how do you balance doing really great reporting and quality journalism with the pressures of a deadline, or the pressures of in many cases the editorial pressures of predominantly male executives?
So I think those things shift as you get more senior. To me, if you're talking about quality, sometimes it's just about simple. If you have 20 minutes to get something done, and in TV news writing, sometimes you have 5 minutes to write a 30-second story. I'm not sure where you're working. Then keep it simple, right? My whole thing was like, whatever I'm writing, it will be right. It may not be Emmy Award-winning Visco, but what I won't do is get so complicated that I inherently screw it up. So whenever I'm pressed for time because it's a deadline, then we keep it to what we know, and we keep it very, very simple, and only in things that I can assure you I have fact-checked. The minute people start getting, in front of themselves, that's when the trouble happens. One of the things that I have noticed across the board in every network, places where people get sued because of mistakes, is always in the teases. Sometimes I would see these, you'd hear about who was getting in trouble. You're like, because someone was very creative with the tease, like, well, that was wrong. And the report itself could be right. So I would say simple, simple, simple. If you are at the bottom of the totem pole, a really great thing to learn is to bite your tongue, go out for drinks later with your girlfriend, and spill all with them, go back to work the next morning, bite your tongue again. Because no one wants to hear from someone low on the totem pole about all the things that are wrong. In TV news, there is a litany of stuff you could talk about every single day. It will have you hated, and you shouldn't do it. And you just won't move ahead. You'll become that girl who's a problem, and nobody wants to work with. And you can be speaking the truth. It does not matter. So don't do that. You really don't want to do that.
Very well put.
What you want to do is climb the ladder a little bit and watch the senior women. And what you'll discover is that people who are really, really smart, they know how to say, and not only women, but across the board, they know how to put things to get what they want changed. Right? There's a way of saying, Bob is lying, and there's a way of saying, I think the focus of this story should be X. Right? And I'm the queen of the Bob is lying. That is not a good strategy. Be the person who can figure out how to get the results you want in that meeting. That's not about engaging in a fight. And I bring this up because Black in America was very contentious. It was an incredibly unpleasant and hostile experience in the editorial conversation, right? Who was Black in America, who's in, who's out, blah, 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 blah. I had a lot of people who'd be like, well, you're not really Black kind of conversation. So it was personal and crazy. And what I realized was at the end of the day, if you could figure out how to bring all those voices together, and it was a place that taught me the best way to get good quality was to never say, I believe this, but to say, that's so interesting. Tell me why you believe that. Someone would say, well, you shouldn't even be doing this. You're not even Black. These are people, my colleagues. And I'd say, well, instead of saying something unprintable, because we're rolling on this, I would say instead, that's really interesting. Tell me why you feel that way. What does it mean to be really Black? What does it mean? What's your take on what this story should be? Answer with a question, right? And sometimes you can bring people around without never telling them anything. Just constantly going back. So you think that someone who's doing this, then their story is not valid. It sounds like and you just keep asking and asking. And you might find at the end, you kind of bring everybody around to a way of thinking, you actually haven't stated for the record anything. You've just kept asking questions. So that, I think, should be your strategy when you're, at the bottom of the totem pole, and even as you move up, to constantly be less defensive and just shape things by saying, let me reflect back what I'm hearing as a question.
Thank you. I think we had a question in the back of the room. Go ahead, stand up. Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead, you can start.
Okay, so my question really relates to the comment that you believe that part of the reason that women are only 20% of the leadership at the max, like in the U.S. Senate, and only 2.2 or 3% of Fortune 500 CEOs, is because you don't believe that women are comfortable with power. And I've been studying women's leadership for 33 years, and I'm an employment lawyer, and I'm writing a book on the challenges of women's leadership. And in the last 2 weeks, I've interviewed the former president of AT&T, the former CEO of Xerox. I've interviewed the first woman Speaker of the House of the U.S. Congress, lots of top women leaders. And not a single woman who I've interviewed, nor in all my years of being an employment lawyer, did ever strike me that the problem is from within women, that they are afraid of power. I think that those women who have reached the pinnacles of leadership would say to the person, today you still have to be twice as good as a woman to get to the same place as a man at the leadership level, not at the entry level, not at the mid-manager level, but at the leadership level. And part of it is really not because the women themselves are uncomfortable with power, but because people around them are not accustomed to seeing women in power.
Yeah.
And that's why this is so important.
And that actually throws back to something else, at the last question, that seeing Soledad on TV. You cannot be what you cannot see. And it's so important that we as women who have made our way are there for the younger women to help them and to reach out to them.
Absolutely.
And to be a role model for them.
Absolutely. And if you look at sort of the first woman who ran for president from a main party, Hillary Clinton, she was not uncomfortable with power. Right. But there were a lot of people who were uncomfortable with the concept of a woman having that kind of power. And every time, to parrot some of what you folks are saying, every time you just push the edge of the envelope and you keep on pushing and you try something and you're brave and you're outrageous and you network and you model for other women, people will become more and more comfortable with women in power. And I think that's what we have to change, perceptions rather than people's own sense of comfort.
Great. Well, we can take one more question. You can take this. We'll try to do two. If we can make it quick responses, we'll take two. We're going to hold this to 30-second responses.
Okay, this question's for Loretta. My name is Audrey Green. I'm here from the New York Stock Exchange. And over the last couple of years, I've been very fortunate to work on initiatives that support startups. So the Big Startup Project and a number of others. And my question is, if you're coming from a organization that's meant to support startups in a mentoring or a networking capacity the way our groups do, what is a tactful and fair way to ensure women are fairly represented in the groups that we
in the groups of startup companies themselves? Yeah. First of all, I'd say that women are starting businesses all over the place, so it's really a matter of getting into the marketplace, finding them, and make sure that they know what services are available to them. We are astonished at how frequently and at the rate at which women are starting businesses. So I think that if you are an organization that is supporting women who are startups, and you want women to be a certain mix of them, there are many organizations in the ecosystem here in New York and really all over the country that are incubating companies such as that, and I'd be happy to talk to you in the networking session about how to find some of them.
Can I add one thing to that? And I know
Please.
we're tight for time, but because I think that's a metaphor for people who are not working on the stock exchange, right? Which is, this could also be your job, right? You're looking around saying like, boy, secretly, I'd kind of like to see more women in this group. Make this your thing. Don't have to tell everybody, but you go out and you find those companies. You know who you can bring in. And you could say, I actually have 10 other people I'd love to bring into this conversation. And it can be kind of your responsibility. If you're waiting for it to sort of be inherently fair, you'll be waiting the rest of your life. So your job, now that you have a nice little toe in, right, to make a difference, is this can be your secret personal mission for what you want to see change. And you can get a couple of friends around who also have that, who might say, well, actually, I would like to see more Asians doing startups, and I would like to see more black women doing startups, and I'd like to see whatever, and that can be your mission while bringing everybody in. And I think that's, to me, that was my strategy in journalism. I want to see more black people on TV.
Great.
That's what we're going to do.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Betty Imam, and I'm the Director of Communication for Persian Parade. To your point, and to your point, seeing women being at the top, I think the other challenge that we have is ethnic or multicultural women. Definitely, they have a challenge to raise themselves to the top. So my question to you is, coming up, how did you face that challenge of, cultural women or ethnic women that want to give a voice to the culture as well as the women that they represent in that culture?
I would say two things. Number one, be a good reporter first. Nobody cares about your culture if you're not a good reporter. And I would say I've had guys who were producers who'd say, well, I want to go and chair the gay such and such. I'm like, not till you're good. Your voice will have no power until you're great. Then, once you're a great producer, they'll say, wow, Steve is doing such and such. He says such and such. It must be true because he's such an amazing producer. So I don't want to hear anything about the group you represent until you are considered to be a great reporter. Then you can go and do it, number one. Number two, and I would add to those groups, not just ethnic groups, I think sexual orientation, I think working mom is kind of a special category. And when I started doing stories, for example, CNN covering the tsunami, and they called me up, and it was actually a woman who said, so there's been a tsunami and they want to send somebody to Thailand, but I know you're not going to want to go because you have 4 kids, so you probably don't want to go. But anyway, we just have to call you. And I realized that the best way to kind of break through on these things was to have tremendous humor. So I would say all the time, Thailand, I have 4 kids. Put me on the plane to Thailand. That sounds amazing. And I would constantly joke about how nobody, my boss said when I was pregnant with twins, well, we're not sure what you're going to do. You never know if you're going to stay at work. I'm like, the only employee you have who can guarantee she's coming back is me. I have 4 kids. I'm about to knock out twins, so trust me, I will be here in 6 weeks with bells on, ready to go. And by constantly kind of putting that in everybody's face, they got very comfortable with it, because I was sort of blunt about kind of making it part of the conversation. And the same thing, at a certain level, you can do in ethics, right? The number in ethnic conversations. For black people, Latinos, you'll be like, and how about we see a Hispanic woman in this somewhere, since this is the population we're talking about? And people will get it if the tone is right. But I think it does have to be navigated very intentionally.
Thank you. Thank you. Great answer. So with that, I'm going to turn over the closing remarks to Kathleen Carroll, who is on our advisory council.
Thank you, Amy. Wasn't that a great panel?
Yes.
I know I put away a lot of good advice about reaching down, helping raise up women leaders. I also did major in bio. And
That's very funny.
And about how to fail and fail gracefully, and how to get yourself started up again. I just think it's wonderful what you all have shown and shared with us today. I thank you, and thank our founder, Amy.
Yay, Amy!
So all of this happens because of the passion of women, and I think we can really feel it being palpable here today. And one of the things I'd like to ask, there always is an ask part, is for you to be involved. Now this is involved in time. There are things that you can do with the new agenda. This is to be involved with money. If you'd like to be a sponsor or angel investor, we would greatly appreciate it. What we're going for is 100% participation, 100% donations if we can, because for every woman that does it, the word gets out faster, and we need that, so it's not 70 years until we have a seat of leadership equivalent to men. We need it sooner.
We can use all your help. Write to us after the event. We hold events year-round on campus, so if you're a college woman, when you go back to campus, we would love to hold an event at your business school, your law school, your college, or at your corporation. We do events for millennial women at corporations. And we got great reviews. We did for summer interns last year at S&P, got all check pluses, my best report card since second grade. But if you write to us, we will find ways for you to be involved. We have boards, we have advisory council, we have a young women leadership council. Those are all those wonderful women who met you and helped you in the door today. We have a think tank and bloggers, and we have events all year round, so there are many ways, and I want you all to reach out and be part of the solution together. Okay, we are starting something here that will continue. I see much progress since we started this organization in 2008. I see it firsthand, but it's just the beginning of the battle of awareness. And as Karen Geringer, my board member, likes to say, stop whining and start doing something about it. So we are all together going to do something about it. Join us. Thank you so much for joining us. We're all going to now leave everybody to at all your events. We have events all over the country, and my favorite story is from Albuquerque, New Mexico. A woman wrote to me. We closed out that event, sold it out. A woman from Taos, I might be saying that wrong, emailed me and said, you sold out your event, but I'd like to bring 2 friends. Can I bring them along? And by the way, they're driving 2.5 hours to go to Albuquerque to attend this event. So please all network, and we'll come back next year. Everyone put June 4th, 2014 on their calendar. We'll see you again. Thank you for checking in. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
That was wonderful.